Babylon, 323 BC. Alexander of Macedon is 32 years old, completely undefeated in battle, and ruling an empire stretching from Greece to modern-day Pakistan. Embassies from distant lands, Etruscans, Libyans, Ethiopians, have traveled thousands of miles simply to recognize his authority. Over the last decade, he has survived close-quarters combat in Persian cavalry charges, taken a nearly fatal arrow wound to the chest in India, and marched his army through the lethal heat of the Gedrosian Desert. He seems physically indestructible. Then, as he prepares for his next major campaign, a sudden fever takes hold. Within days, the man who spent a decade surviving the deadliest battlefields of the ancient world dies quietly in his own bed. Modern historians often point to natural causes for this rapid decline: malaria, typhoid fever, or even cholera. But almost immediately, another theory began circulating among ancient writers. They suspected poison. To figure out why a monarch at the absolute height of his power might be assassinated by his own people, we have to look past the battlefields. We need to look at the men standing inside his royal tent. Following his defeat of the Persian King Darius, Alexander's leadership began to sour. The trusted commander morphed into an increasingly paranoid ruler. When an assassination plot was uncovered, Alexander learned that Philotas, commander of his elite companion cavalry, had known about it but kept quiet. Alexander had him tortured and executed. Then he sent assassins to murder Philotas's father, the legendary general Parmenion, to prevent him from taking revenge. The anxiety among his inner circle worsened as Alexander started aggressively adopting the customs of the empire he had just conquered. He began wearing Persian royal dress and elevating Persian nobles into his administration. His Macedonian veterans were deeply insulted. They had spent years fighting to subdue Persia, and now they watched their king embrace customs they viewed as decadent and soft. The breaking point arrived with a ritual called Proskynesis. Alexander ordered his Greek officers to perform this traditional Persian court custom, which required them to prostrate themselves face down on the floor before him. To the Greeks, bowing like this was absolute blasphemy. In their culture, a man only lowered himself to the ground to worship a god. Alexander was forcing them to treat him as a living deity. He had become an alien monarch. By demanding divine honors and adopting foreign customs, he actively severed the loyalty of the veteran commanders who had built his empire. The cultural friction soon turned deadly. During a furious, drunken argument in modern-day Samarkand, Alexander murdered one of his best generals, Clitus the Black, the exact same man who had saved Alexander's life in combat years earlier at the river Granicus. This erratic behavior shattered the army's morale. After marching thousands of miles, the troops snapped at the Bias River, flatly refusing to advance. The tension followed them home. At Opis, another mutiny erupted, his veterans outraged by his preference for Persian recruits. Alexander retaliated by executing the ringleaders of the revolt. The dynamic of his command was fully inverted. He was no longer ruling through shared military glory, but through direct intimidation. By the time the army returned to Babylon, the men running Alexander's empire were legitimately terrified of him. For an ambitious general worried about his own survival, a preemptive assassination was a highly rational move. We return to Babylon in 323 BC. Alexander is grieving the recent fever death of his closest friend, Hephaestion, and finds himself isolated among a high command that no longer trusts him. Whether he succumbed to an opportunistic disease or was quietly poisoned by a fearful general, he left behind a massive, highly unstable territory with absolutely no succession plan in place. The moment he died, his surviving commanders immediately turned on each other, tearing the map apart in a series of brutal conflicts known as the Wars of the Successors. To ensure there were no legitimate claims to the throne they were fighting over, these generals systematically purged Alexander's bloodline, murdering his widow Roxana and his young son. Even his corpse was treated as a political pawn. While his gold sarcophagus was being transported back to Macedonia for burial, one of his rival generals hijacked the convoy and diverted his body to Egypt to legitimize a breakaway kingdom. Alexander conquered the entire known world in 10 years, but his empire fractured in days because the greatest tactical mind of the ancient era entirely failed to manage the men inside his own camp.